The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Meridian Ballroom cast dancing shadows across Sarah Mitchell's champagne flute as she navigated through Chicago's elite at her foundation's annual charity gala. Her Valentino gown, a masterpiece in midnight blue silk, whispered against the marble floors with each step. At 32, she'd mastered the art of being the perfect hotel heiress. Her smile practiced, her laugh melodious, her networking impeccable. But tonight was different. The news of her board's quiet discussions about her capability to lead the Mitchell Hotel Group weighed heavily on her mind. The champagne offered temporary solace, each glass making the room spin just a little more, the fake smiles become a little more bearable. Her assistant Jennifer had offered to call her driver, but Sarah had waved her off with the practiced arrogance of someone who'd never faced real consequences. The night air hit her face as she stumbled slightly on her Louboutin heels toward her Mercedes S-Class, its sleek silver surface reflecting the city lights like liquid mercury. The rational part of her brain registered that driving was a terrible idea, but the combination of alcohol, pride, and rebellion against her board's constant scrutiny silenced that voice. Chicago's downtown streets stretched before her like a ribbon of black silk, the rain starting as a gentle mist before transforming into a steady downpour. The streetlights blurred into streaks of gold, her speedometer climbing past 60 in a 35 zone. Sarah couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Here she was, proving every critic right about her irresponsibility. The curve appeared suddenly, a sharp bend in the road that her alcohol-addled reflexes couldn't handle. The Mercedes hydroplaned, its tires losing their grip on the wet asphalt. Time seemed to slow as the car spun, and Sarah had a moment of perfect clarity before impact. This might be how it all ends. Marcus Johnson stood in the empty security office of the Morrison building for the last time, his fingers trailing over the desk where he'd spent countless nights during the past 5 years. At 40, he'd thought he'd found stability, a way to support his mother's medical bills while pursuing his dream of writing in the quiet hours of night shift. The termination letter had been polite but firm. Budget cuts, downsizing, the usual corporate euphemisms for disposable. His last paycheck felt inadequate in his wallet. $843.27 after taxes. Just enough for 1 more month's rent or half of his mother's medication, but not both. The small box of personal belongings under his arm contained 5 years of his life. A dog-eared copy of James Baldwin's essays, a coffee mug his mother had given him, and a half-finished manuscript about growing up on Chicago's South Side. The crash shattered the quiet night like a thunderclap. Marcus dropped his box, its contents scattering across the wet sidewalk as he sprinted toward the sound. The Mercedes had wrapped itself around a lamppost, steam rising from its crumpled hood to mingle with the rain. The acrid smell of gasoline and burning rubber filled the air. Through the spiderweb of cracks in the windshield, he saw her, pale as marble, blood trickling from her hairline, the airbag deployed like a grotesque pillow against her face. The driver's door was crumpled, but Marcus's security training kicked in. He knew he had precious minutes before the leaking fuel could turn this accident fatal. With careful but urgent movements, he managed to force the door open, his hands getting cut on the broken glass. Sarah hung limply in her seatbelt, her designer dress now stained with blood and rain. Marcus checked her pulse, weak but steady, before gently supporting her neck and extracting her from the wreckage. As sirens wailed in the distance, he cradled her head in his lap, using his security uniform jacket to keep her warm. "Stay with me," he whispered, rain mixing with tears he didn't realize he was shedding. "You're not alone. Help is coming." When the paramedics arrived, Marcus handed over his wallet without hesitation. "Everything in there," he said firmly. "Make sure she gets whatever she needs." The EMT tried to protest, but Marcus was insistent. He watched as they loaded Sarah into the ambulance, his last paycheck now transformed into a stranger's lifeline. In the growing puddle at his feet, his manuscript lay ruined, the ink running in rivulets across the pages. But as Marcus gathered his scattered belongings, he felt a strange peace. Some things were worth more than money or dreams. Sometimes saving a life was enough. Awakening to a new reality. The steady beep of medical monitors punctuated Sarah's return to consciousness. Her eyelids felt like lead weights as she struggled to open them, the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room assaulting her senses. The pristine white ceiling came into focus slowly, along with the antiseptic smell that seemed to permeate every surface. Eleanor Mitchell, Sarah's mother, sat rigidly in a designer chair by the bedside, her Hermes scarf and perfectly coiffed silver hair at odds with the institutional setting. William Mitchell, Sarah's father and chairman of the hotel group's board, paced by the window, his Italian loafers wearing an invisible path in the linoleum floor. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a scalpel. "Oh, darling," Eleanor's voice cracked as she noticed Sarah's eyes open. "We've been so worried." Her practiced composure slipped for a moment as she grabbed her daughter's hand, her French manicured nails digging slightly into Sarah's palm. The doctor's rounds brought a parade of medical terminology: severe concussion, minor lacerations, miraculous escape from internal injuries. But Sarah's focus kept drifting to a detail that seemed out of place in the sterile hospital narrative. A mysterious savior who'd paid for her initial treatment with cash and disappeared into the night. The nurse, Maria Rodriguez, had been on duty when they brought Sarah in. "He was soaking wet," she recalled, straightening Sarah's IV line. "Didn't even give his name at first, just handed over everything he had. When I tried to get his information for reimbursement, he just left his card and said to make sure you were taken care of." The business card sat on Sarah's bedside table, its edges worn and slightly warped from the rain. Marcus Johnson, Security Services, followed by an address in Bronzeville, one of Chicago's historically black neighborhoods. The simplicity of the card struck Sarah. No fancy embossing, no corporate logo, just basic information on cheap cardstock. Worlds colliding. The Bronzeville neighborhood stood in stark contrast to Sarah's Gold Coast penthouse. Historic greystones lined the streets, their weathered facades telling stories of generations of struggle and resilience. As Sarah's Bentley glided to a stop outside Marcus's address, the curious glances from neighbors suggested that luxury vehicles weren't common visitors here. Marcus's apartment building was a pre-war structure, its red brick exterior meticulously maintained despite its age. The front garden, though small, burst with life. Carefully tended marigolds and chrysanthemums, adding splashes of color against the urban landscape. Sarah would later learn that Marcus's mother had started this garden years ago, and he'd maintained it in her memory. Inside his third-floor walk-up, Marcus sat at his small desk, grading papers from the creative writing class he taught at the community center. The morning light filtered through clean but worn curtains, illuminating walls lined with bookshelves. Each shelf told its own story. Well-worn copies of James Baldwin and Toni Morrison sharing space with dog-eared security manuals and contemporary fiction. The knock at his door was soft but determined. Through the peephole, Marcus saw her. Sarah Mitchell, looking both out of place and somehow vulnerable in her casual designer outfit that probably cost more than his monthly rent. He took a deep breath, straightening his simple button-down shirt before opening the door. The conversation that followed was a delicate dance of two worlds colliding. Sarah, clutching her Hermes bag like a shield, tried to maintain her usual confidence, but found herself stumbling over words. The practiced speeches about gratitude and compensation died on her lips as she took in Marcus's dignified bearing and the quiet intelligence in his eyes. His small living room became the stage for an unexpected confrontation of assumptions. Sarah's eyes were drawn to the framed photographs on the wall. Marcus, in his army uniform, an elderly woman with his same gentle smile, graduation pictures from Northwestern University. Each image challenged her preconceptions. "I don't want your money, Ms. Mitchell," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of years of dealing with people who thought everything had a price. "Some things aren't about financial transactions." The check for $10,000 in Sarah's hand suddenly felt ridiculous, almost insulting. She found herself instead drawn to the manuscript pages scattered on his desk, glimpsing words that spoke of dignity, resilience, and the complex tapestry of Chicago's social fabric. The coffee invitation. The Seven Stars Hotel's executive office suite occupied the entire 50th floor of a downtown skyscraper, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Lake Michigan. Sarah sat behind her desk, her fingers absently tracing the edges of Marcus's business card, while her assistant Jennifer ran through the day's schedule. "The board meeting about the hostile takeover threat is at 2 p.m., Jennifer reminded her, "and the European investors are expecting a video call at 4. Also, your father wants to discuss the PR strategy regarding your incident." Sarah barely heard her, her mind replaying her interaction with Marcus. His refusal of her money hadn't felt like pride or stubbornness. It had felt like a challenge to her entire worldview. Before she could second-guess herself, she picked up her phone. The coffee invitation came out awkwardly, almost teenage-like in its hesitancy. Marcus, in the middle of his job search, found himself caught off guard by her call. The mention of the Seven Stars Hotel, her flagship property, and one of Chicago's most exclusive establishments, hung between them like a symbol of their different worlds. "Just coffee," Sarah said, trying to make it sound casual. "Tomorrow at 10? I'd like to hear more about your writing." Marcus stood in his bedroom the next morning, considering his reflection in the full-length mirror. His charcoal suit, though not designer, was well-tailored, a reminder of better days when he'd worked corporate security. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. "Dignity isn't about what you wear, baby. It's about how you carry yourself." The suit jacket still bore a slight crease from where he'd kept it carefully stored after losing his job. As he adjusted his tie, his eyes fell on the stack of rejection letters from potential employers. Each one cited his overqualification, a polite way of saying they weren't comfortable hiring a black man with a master's degree for entry-level positions. The long wait. The Seven Stars Hotel lobby was a masterpiece of contemporary luxury. Soaring marble columns supported a ceiling painted with gold leaf, while crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across the polished floor. At 9:45 a.m., Marcus walked through the revolving doors, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The lobby cafe, Stellar Brews, was positioned to offer views of both the urban landscape and the hotel's famous three-story water feature. The maitre d' gave Marcus a cursory glance, his expression shifting from professional welcome to barely concealed suspicion in the space of a heartbeat. "I'm meeting Ms. Mitchell," Marcus said quietly, maintaining eye contact. The maitre d's demeanor changed instantly, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes as he led Marcus to a corner table. Meanwhile, 50 floors above, Sarah was trapped in an emergency board meeting. The takeover threat had escalated overnight, with rumors of a competing hotel chain making moves to acquire controlling shares. Her father's words cut through the tension. "This is exactly why we need to project stability right now, Sarah. The accident was bad enough for our image." Hours ticked by in the cafe. Marcus ordered a simple black coffee, watching as it grew cold. Each time the door opened, he looked up, only to face disappointed glances from wealthy patrons who quickly averted their eyes. The staff's initial professional courtesy gradually transformed into whispered conversations and suspicious glances. Richard Blake, the hotel manager, had been watching the situation unfold with growing agitation. His 20 years in luxury hospitality had taught him the importance of maintaining a certain atmosphere. A clearly non-wealthy black man, sitting alone in the hotel's premier cafe for hours, was, in his view, a disruption to that atmosphere. The Confrontations Symphony. Richard Blake approached Marcus's table with the practiced grace of a predator. His Savile Row suit and gold Rolex were carefully chosen weapons in his arsenal of intimidation. 23 years of managing elite hotels had taught him how to make the unwanted feel their unworthiness without ever explicitly stating it. "Sir," Blake's voice dripped with false courtesy, each syllable precisely engineered to wound. "I couldn't help but notice you've been here for—" He made a show of checking his watch. "Nearly 3 hours now. Might I inquire about your purpose here?" Marcus met Blake's gaze steadily, his dignity a shield against the manager's thinly veiled contempt. "I'm meeting Ms. Mitchell," he replied, his voice calm despite the growing tension. "She invited me for coffee." A slight smirk played across Blake's features, like a cat toying with its prey. "Ms. Mitchell, Sarah Mitchell, our owner." His laugh was soft but cruel. "And you expect me to believe that someone like you would be meeting with someone like her?" The cafe had grown quiet, other patrons pretending not to watch while hanging on every word. A young waitress hesitated nearby, her discomfort with the situation evident in her nervous movements. "I don't expect you to believe anything, Mr. Blake," Marcus replied, reading the manager's nameplate. "But it's the truth. I can wait outside if my presence here is causing concern." "Oh, so you know my name?" Blake's voice turned sharp. "Been studying our staff, have you? Planning something, perhaps? Security?" He snapped his fingers, and 2 suited guards materialized nearby. When Marcus reached for his wallet to pay for his coffee, the blood drained from his face. In his meticulous preparation for meeting Sarah, he'd transferred his wallet to his good suit and left it on his dresser. A storm breaks. The next few minutes unfolded like a well-choreographed ballet of humiliation. Blake's voice rose theatrically as he accused Marcus of attempting to defraud the hotel. The security guards, more accustomed to dealing with drunk celebrities than keeping the peace, shifted uncomfortably but followed their manager's lead. "Call the police!" Blake commanded, his voice carrying across the now silent cafe. "We have a vagrant attempting to steal services." He turned to the gathering crowd of onlookers, playing to his audience. "This is exactly why we must maintain our standards, the moment we let our guard down." The police officers who arrived were young, their hands nervously resting on their weapons as they entered the prestigious hotel. Blake painted a vivid picture of deception and potential threat, his words carefully chosen to emphasize Marcus's size and appearance while downplaying his calm demeanor. As they began to handcuff Marcus, a commotion erupted from the hotel's main entrance. Sarah Mitchell burst through the doors, her Louboutin heels clicking rapidly across the marble floor. Her face, normally composed for magazine covers and board meetings, was flushed with anger and exertion. "Stop!" Her voice cracked like a whip across the lobby. "Take those handcuffs off him immediately!" The tableau froze, police officers mid-motion, Blake's smug expression crumbling, Marcus standing tall despite his restraints, and Sarah, looking every inch the hotel empress, radiating fury, justice and transformation. "Mr. Blake!" Sarah's voice was deadly quiet as she approached. "Would you care to explain why you're having one of my personal guests arrested?" Blake's complexion shifted from red to pale and back again. "Miss Mitchell, we had no way of knowing. He claimed to know you, and when he couldn't pay—" "So you assumed he was lying? Based on what exactly?" Sarah's eyes flashed dangerously. "His skin color? His clothes? Please enlighten me about your criteria for deciding who is worthy of being believed in my hotel." The lobby had become packed with onlookers, guests, staff, and passers-by, all drawn to the unfolding drama. Among them, Sarah spotted several members of her board who had followed her down from the emergency meeting. "Remove those handcuffs," she commanded the officers. "This man, Marcus Johnson, saved my life last week when everyone else passed by. He gave his last paycheck to ensure I received medical care, and today I made him wait for hours because I was trapped in meetings about people who care more about profit than humanity." As the handcuffs came off, Sarah turned to address the crowd, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "This ends today. The 7 Stars was built by my grandfather to be a place of excellence, not exclusion. Mr. Blake, you're terminated, effective immediately. Please escort him out." She nodded to the security guards who had just been following his orders. Then, in a move that would be talked about in hospitality circles for years to come, Sarah Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell Hotel Group, darling of Chicago's elite society, dropped to one knee in front of Marcus Johnson. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But I'm asking for a chance to make this right, not just with you, but with everyone who has ever been judged, dismissed, or humiliated because of prejudice. Will you help me transform this hotel, this entire industry, into what it should have been all along?" Headlines and hard truths. Chicago's media landscape erupted the morning after the 7 Stars incident. The Sun-Times ran with "Hotel Heiress Takes Stand Against Discrimination," while the Tribune opted for "Mitchell Hotel Group CEO Transforms Crisis into Cultural Revolution." Viral videos of Sarah's confrontation with Blake flooded social media, her passionate speech becoming a rallying cry for change in the hospitality industry. In Marcus's modest apartment, the morning brought a different kind of storm. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from journalists, social justice organizations, and even literary agents interested in his unfinished manuscript. Sitting at his small kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee, he read through emails offering everything from book deals to speaking engagements. Sarah's penthouse office had become a war room. Her PR team scrambled to handle the media frenzy while her board members called emergency meetings. William Mitchell, her father, paced the room, his face a mix of concern and grudging admiration. "You've started something here, Sarah," he said, pausing to look out over the Chicago skyline. "The question is, are you ready for what comes next?" Sarah's response was to pull out a leather-bound notebook, its pages filled with her hurriedly scrawled ideas from a sleepless night. "I'm not just ready, Dad. I've been waiting for this moment my whole life without knowing it." The revolution begins. The transformation of the Mitchell Hotel Group began not with grand gestures, but with quiet, fundamental changes. Marcus's first official act as newly appointed Chief of Cultural Transformation was to gather the hotel staff, all of them, from housekeepers to executives, in the grand ballroom. The meeting broke every hierarchy rule in the hospitality industry. Maids sat next to managers, dishwashers beside directors. Marcus stood on the stage, his presence commanding respect without demanding it. "Your stories matter," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Today, we start writing a new chapter together." The initiatives they launched over the next months were revolutionary. The Dignity First program, ensuring every employee received living wages and comprehensive benefits, cultural competency training designed by Marcus, mandatory for all staff from entry-level to executive, a mentorship program pairing experienced staff with newcomers from underserved communities, the transformation of unused hotel spaces into community cultural centers, a scholarship foundation for employees' children, funded by a percentage of hotel profits. Sarah worked alongside the housekeeping staff for a week, experiencing firsthand the challenges they faced. She emerged with dirt under her manicured nails and a deeper understanding of what needed to change. Personal transformations. As autumn painted Chicago's streets in gold and crimson, Sarah and Marcus's professional partnership evolved into something deeper. Their weekly strategy meetings often ran late into the evening, conversations flowing from hotel policies to literature, from childhood memories to dreams for the future. Marcus introduced Sarah to his world: Sunday dinners in Bronzeville, community poetry readings, the rich tapestry of life that existed beyond her privileged bubble. She found herself transformed by these experiences, her designer clothes gathering dust as she discovered the joy of simply being herself. Sarah, in turn, showed Marcus how to navigate the corporate world without losing his authenticity. Together, they attended board meetings where Marcus's quiet wisdom often cut through hours of circular discussion to the heart of matters. Their first kiss happened in the hotel's rooftop garden, a new space they'd created for staff breaks. Surrounded by herbs and flowers planted by hotel employees, they found themselves discussing Baldwin's If Beale Street Could Talk as the sun set over Lake Michigan. "You've changed me," Sarah whispered, her hand finding his. "No," Marcus replied softly. "You changed yourself. I just showed you it was possible." A legacy of change. 5 years after the incident that brought them together, the Mitchell-Johnson Hotel Group, renamed after their wedding, had become a case study in corporate transformation. Harvard Business School professors analyzed their model of inclusive luxury, while hospitality industry leaders scrambled to copy their success. The flagship Seven Stars Hotel, once a symbol of exclusivity, had become a gathering place for Chicago's diverse communities. The lobby cafe, where Marcus had once been humiliated, now hosted monthly poetry readings, its walls adorned with works by local artists. Their personal story had become legend in the industry, but it was their actions that created lasting change. The scholarship program had sent dozens of employees' children to college. The cultural competency training program had been adopted by hotel chains worldwide. Their profit-sharing model had revolutionized hospitality industry compensation standards. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Sarah and Marcus stood in the hotel lobby, watching the diverse crowd of guests and staff moving through the space with easy familiarity. A young black bellhop was enthusiastically recommending local jazz clubs to an elderly white couple. A hijab-wearing executive chef was training a new kitchen team. The hotel hummed with the energy of genuine inclusion. "Did you ever imagine this?" Sarah asked, leaning into Marcus's embrace. "That night in the rain, when you found me in that crash car." Marcus smiled, thinking of the manuscript he'd finally finished, a story about transformation, love, and the power of seeing beyond surface appearances. "I imagined saving a life," he said. "I never dreamed we'd end up saving so many." Above them, the crystal chandeliers caught the setting sun, casting rainbow prisms across the marble floors. But now these symbols of luxury seemed less about exclusivity and more about possibility. The possibility that one moment of kindness could transform not just 2 lives, but an entire world. Epilogue: The Ripple Effect. Their story didn't end with personal happiness or corporate success. The Mitchell-Johnson Foundation became a force for change in the hospitality industry, providing resources and support for other companies seeking to transform their cultures. Marcus's book, Beyond the Lobby, A story of love, justice, and corporate transformation became required reading in hospitality management programs. Sarah's TED Talk, The Economics of Inclusion, went viral, inspiring a new generation of business leaders. But perhaps their greatest legacy was the simple truth their story represented: that real change begins not with grand gestures or corporate initiatives, but with individual acts of kindness and courage. That sometimes the most powerful transformation starts with one person choosing to see another as fully human. In the end, their story became more than a tale of romance or corporate change. It became a testament to the possibility that lies within each moment of choice. The possibility that by choosing kindness over prejudice, understanding over assumption, love over fear, we might all find our way to a better world. The Seven Stars Hotel still stands in downtown Chicago, its lights blazing against the night sky. But now it shines not as a beacon of exclusivity, but as a testament to the transformative power of love, justice, and the courage to change.